I'm like, it's only one inch. Cool. It's kind of one. Okay. Brand new neighbor.
He told me that you.
On this meeting of Board of Supervisors to order, I'll ask the pledge of allegiance, Supervisor Driscoll.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, ask the clerk to do the roll call.
Mr. Conover.
Here.
Mr. Leggett.
Here.
Mr. Diamond. Mr. McDevitt.
Here.
Ms. Bramer. Here. Mr. Bruno.
Here.
Mr. Driscoll.
Here.
Mrs. Frazier. Here. Mr. Drossy.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Dickinson.
Here.
Mr. Merlino.
Here.
Mr. Stroud.
Here.
Mr. Wild. Mr. McGowan.
Here.
Mr. Beatty.
Wow. Here.
Ms. Steck. Here. Mr. Thomas.
Here.
Ms. Runyon. Chairman Garrity.
Here.
Quorum is established.
Okay. At this time, I'll ask Mayor Blaze if he would come up to the front of the room. Everybody knows Mayor Blaze. He's been in office. He was a village trustee. He started his career in 1968. 55 years later, he's still serving the village as the mayor. The mayor's impact on the village of Lake George and Warren County has been huge. Some of the events he's taken care of is Festival Commons. He was a mover and shaker to see that move along. He's brought in Americade, the Adirondack Nationals car shows, ice castles, the Winter Carnival, and much, much more. The lakefront walkway was his design, and he spearheaded that project as well, and that's enjoyed by many visitors. The mayor's legacy is more in tourism, and hopefully he'll continue on as the Barnum Valley of Wood Park in the future. We're hoping that the mayor will stay with us in that capacity. Also, the amount of work that he did on the wastewater treatment plant. And only one person could get that much grant money into the small village of Lake George. So, Mayor, it's our pleasure to issue this proclamation on behalf of all the work you've done for Lake George, Warren County, and I'm sure we're still going to see you around.
Yeah.
We like to get the symbol of the county.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, at this time, I'll open up for privilege of the floor and public comment. Anyone who wishes to address the board, please come up to the microphone, state your name for the record.
My name, is this on?
Yep.
It is? Yeah. My name is David Judkins. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for your time. I'm a lifelong resident in this area and a practicing physician here for the past 35 years. You may remember I came before you approximately a year and a half ago after I was appointed and then removed from the LDC before I could attend a single meeting without explanation. I might also just add that not only am I a lifelong resident here, I remember when Mayor Blaze came to my house dressed up as Santa Claus when I was 5 years old. I've kept the BOS of the LDC out of curiosity since that time, and I have some concerns I would like to bring to your attention. I respectfully ask for all of your objective consideration of what I'm about to say, without regards to your party or your affiliation or previous alliances. I realize you all have a very difficult job running your respective towns and may not be completely aware of some of the things I would like to bring to light, and I'll try to do so briefly. Please understand, this is not a partisan issue. The majority of this board is Republican, and I too am a registered Republican, but don't always vote Republican. But I believe strongly in doing the right thing for the taxpayers of our community, regardless of political alliances or friendships. The LDC is currently made up of 7 members, 6 of whom are members of this body, elected officials. The 7th is Mr. Landry, who is also an elected official. That creates 2 problems. One, and perhaps most importantly, is it is completely out of line with what is recommended by the New York State Authority's business office. It states, and I quote, for organizations like the LDC and the EDC, while it is not prohibited, it is a best practice that the ABO does not recommend that a majority of appointed members have a political or employment relationship with the government for whose purpose the public authority is created. So I ask you, as members of this board, how do we justify, how do we square with the voters of this county, of this area, how do we square the fact that every single one of the members of the LDC is an elected official in direct contrast with what's recommended by the ABO? Not the least of which, the last 2 members who were not elected officials were removed without explanation, myself and Mr. Whitehead. How do we square that with the electorate? Next, the LDC has not given out a loan in the last 2 years. The LDC gets $60,000 a year for expenses. The LDC wrote off $400,000 in loans in the last 2 years. Reliable Racing, Stonecast, and Superior Katina. The LDC has a $1.7 million balance in their account that they're not using. When I read some of these things that were quoted from Mr. Whitehead in the paper, I frankly didn't believe it. So I went through and read every meeting minutes of the LDC for the last 2 years. The president and CEO reports, and I'm quoting, November 22, the only expense booked is the contract amount to the EDC. September 22, the largest single expense is the contract held by the EDC to administer the LDC. And then in February, he writes, working with 3 entities on application, delayed for one reason or another. No mention of those applications ever again. Now we might say, well, it's been hard times, pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. Not true. The Lake George, Lake Champlain board has a robust, very active, successful loan and grant program that's ongoing. So I ask you, in the name of the hardworking taxpayers, the people who are getting up and going to work at the mill in the morning, why are we giving $60,000 of hard-earned taxpayer dollars to an entity that has accomplished nothing? And this is not me. This is the LDC itself. This is their report from 2021, and it's unchanged for 2022. And I'll read it for you. Their mission statement is to provide new jobs, keep existing jobs, broaden the local tax base while providing the funding necessary to leverage private sector investments, et cetera, et cetera. Here's their own report. The number of loan funding inquiries, 4. That means 4 people requested information about a loan. Applications received, 0. Approved, 0. Denied, 0. The amount of business loans closed, 0. New jobs committed for creation, 0. Retained jobs, 0. Number of business loans held in current payment status, 80%. That means 20% are not, and we've already written off $400,000 in loans. Number of households assisted, not applicable. Amount of money of housing loans closed, 0. And it's the same for 2022, except that report still isn't available. So what are we going to do with this $1.7 million that's in the bank? Are we going to continue to give $60,000 a year to an organization that essentially has done nothing and has only elected officials on their board? That's pretty bad optics, I think, to the taxpayer. Why are there only elected officials on a board that's got 1.7 million and hasn't given out any loans? And no explanation why the only 2 people who were not elected officials were removed. All due respect to Mr. Garrity, he absolutely has the right to do what he did, but he also has an obligation to the people he represents to say why he did it. This is a democracy, not an autocracy. I would point out to you, I have the official certificate of incorporation in 1986 when the LDC was formed. And I actually reached out to one of the few remaining members of this document who's still alive to ask him some questions about it. So I tried to do my homework. The last sentence in its purpose for creating the LDC was to lessen the burdens of government and to act in the public's best interest. How are we acting in the public's best interest when we're given $60,000 a year to do nothing and $1.7 million in the bank that does nothing? I found it interesting that the president and CEO reported frequently in his report, we have a healthy fund balance. Ladies and gentlemen, isn't that the antithesis of what we want for the LDC? We don't want a healthy fund balance. We want a healthy loan portfolio where we're giving out money to loans to do exactly what the purpose of the LDC was. To create business, to lessen the burden of taxes, to create more tax base, et cetera. We're doing none of that. And frankly, the EDC has done nothing either. Excuse me, they have a new office. $350,000 from this board, $114,000 from the town of Queensbury, and the $60,000 this board gives to the LDC goes back to the EDC to administer the LDC to do nothing. I'm just asking, does anybody think this is good optics? Does anybody think that this is the right way to do it? Does anybody think it's okay to remove the only 2 people who volunteered to be on the board, who bring these things to light and pay them back with, sorry, we don't want to know about that, you're out? It's not right. You can't have all elected officials managing $1.7 million with no community involvement. So with that, and by the way, it is not without precedent for you to reduce the amount of money if you choose to. The city of Glens Falls reduced its funding to the EDC over the past several years from 80,000 to 60,000 to 30,000 for 2 years. And my understanding is this year it's going to go to 10,000. So why not just get rid of the LDC, give the money to the Lake George, Lake Champlain organization and let them do what they do best? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So I ask you, don't see me as a complainer. See me as somebody who's asking hard questions for the taxpayer of our county. Are we going to demand that the LDC become compliant with the recommendations of the ABO? And by the way, we're the only county that I could find that has all elected officials on their LDC. Closest, Saratoga. Absolutely not. They have active community involvement. Are we going to reduce funding to try and save some money? Are we gonna view this from the eyes of the struggling taxpayer in our county? I'm begging you on behalf of the people who are paying the taxes, to do something about this. Ask for accountability and ask for a return on our investment of our tax dollars and hold each other accountable irregardless of your party and your previous friendships. Thank you very much and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Anybody else wish to address the board? Anybody else
For the public.
public? Ms. McGowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Jenkins, I want to thank you for coming in. That was well presented and really some of my thoughts directly. The other week when Mr. Whitehead spoke, I asked to step down. I am very busy with business and my personal life, and I want to dedicate for you know, and I brought it up when I mentioned that, you know, is a huge overlay. And, you know, we have the EDC, we have the LDC, we have the economic, and we have the Lake George, Lake Champlain. You know, these entities are giving money out to businesses, but every identity takes a piece of the taxpayers' money. So I've been really thinking about it since this last meeting, and Dr. Jenkins, you brought up a good point, and I believe I brought it up last meeting. You know, maybe you should think about shutting this down and let Lake George, Lake Champlain do it, and set up some kind of contract where, you know, we hang on to the money, and as they get rid of it. And we're paying these entities, that's, you know, $60,000 a year, and the time that, you know, that we have to spend on it. If you're not going to keep more of the on that which is asked for, why shouldn't we be considering doing this? Because it hasn't done anything in the last 2 years. You know, the economy and everything else, but there's so many places out there that are getting the money. And right now, the banks are giving it out. Now, it might turn around if the interest rates are coming back up again. But then that's not, you know, so what do? Do we keep it low just to entice it? But nothing's just come in the last 2 years to even remotely say, and so then we talk about housing, we talk about this, but I really think it should be discussed. Because this is just my opinion, and I'm just one of 20 of us here, but something that we might think of, and trying to save the taxpayers, you know, some money, and letting an organization focus on what they do best. Just a thought. And again, thank you, Dr. Jenkins, and I also want to reach out and thank Travis Whitehead for his time on the LDC. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Beatty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taking care of the taxpayer dollar should be our priority. I've said this over and over again. This is a waste, a thorough waste of the people who work, go to the mill every day, go down, work at Hannaford every day, or at the corner bakery, deli. This is not best use of their tax dollars. This is an absolute, in my opinion, almost an abuse of their tax dollars. The authority that started the LDCs across the state said they highly recommend that private sector volunteers be on the board. It's as clear as that. Private sector, not everybody around sitting around here. You guys aren't private sector, newsflash. You're elected officials. So on the LDC, we have 7 members, all 7 are elected officials. The exact opposite of what the board was created to do and recommended, the exact opposite. Now, when you have $1.7 million sitting there and not doing what it should be doing, which is the LDC should be getting out loans that create additional tax base for the county. And when it doesn't do that, what do we have it for? Why are we funding it? When I found out that Mr. Whitehead, who's, you know, some people love him, some people don't, was taken off the board because he asked the tough questions. And tough questions are uncomfortable. Yeah, they're uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable. But you know something? It's time we start getting the good old boys uncomfortable. And the good old boys, by that I mean people who take and, in my opinion, abuse some of these committees. So here we are, a year and a half later. Private sector volunteer Dr. Judkins is removed 5 days after he's appointed to the board. 5 days. He's a recognized expert in his field. He was willing to spend time and effort, and he's removed from the board, not even meeting the chairman. Never met the guy, never talked to him. You're off. Another private sector citizen, the only one we have, Whitehead, you're off, kicked off, toast. To me, that goes against the wishes of the ABO, directly against them. Now, at the end of the day, what can we do better with the taxpayer dollars? I thoroughly believe disbanding the LDC is a must, is a mandatory requirement from this board to look into, and using that funding to places that actually use the funds in a positive way. The Lake George Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board. They were in total disarray 3 years ago. I was one of the ones that got the director to resign because it was a sham. And now they've reorganized completely, and now they're doing a phenomenal job. They went from 0 to 100. They're doing great work now. But it wasn't until we got private citizens and myself and some other people to speak out against the BS that goes on in some of these agencies and boards. So when we go forward here, we're going to have to start making some tough decisions. You know, well, a lot of people will just say, "Okay, that's over with. Dr. Judkins had his two minutes of fame. He's done. Let's move on." Well, I'm not going to let it move on. I'm going to keep bringing it up over and over and over and over again. We just completed the ARPA committee, which had private citizens volunteering, and it worked tremendously well. We had a collaboration of public officials with the private sector volunteers. They brought a tremendous amount of expertise and knowledge. And it worked perfectly. And now we have an LDC full of elected officials. Nothing against you people, but you know, you guys aren't experts. I'm not an expert. So why don't we have people that have different points of view on the committee? And unfortunately, the chairman's decided we don't want that. We don't want private citizens on there. We want elected officials doling out the money. Well, that's wrong in so many levels. And that's insulting to the people in Warren County who pay the taxes. That's an insult. That's just wrong. It's an insult. And I hope some of you people get on board and agree and start making changes. I hope each and every one, as I look around the room, I look you in the eye. I hope you look around and start looking at yourselves and saying, what can we do better with the taxpayer money? What can we do better? Because this isn't working, gang. It's going the wrong way fast. Thank you.
Anybody else? Dr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. And of course, it is the chair's prerogative to appoint people. And I think that that was a mistake to remove the public members from the committee. Like Supervisor Beatty said, with the ARPA committee, we had members of the public who were participating, and they provided valuable input, a completely different perspective, and they bring their expertise to the committee for free. So I'm really troubled by the fact that we don't have any members of the public, and I'm not trying to embarrass or offend anyone who is currently on the committee. Many of them have been there for a while. I am also concerned about the numbers that we were reported to today. I hadn't seen that before, so I'd love to have a copy of the report. I'm sure it's available online easily to get, but to have no applications, no loans awarded, no assistance to household community members. What are we doing? Why are we spending money to have that entity running? And to the public, it's just another another alphabet soup entity. So why do we have another one that is basically duplicating the efforts of the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board? I don't know if the answer is to disband, to shift the responsibilities over there, but I think that it's our responsibility as a board to look at this. So I would certainly hope that this goes to the Economic Growth Committee for further review. And I would make that a motion to refer this to that committee.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any members of the LDC wish to discuss anything?
Mr. Chairman, I just always question when a motion comes off the floor so quickly. Do we have all the information that we need to vote on this, to throw it into the economic growth? I guess we could do that, but is that the appropriate committee? You know, that's, and what authority does that committee have over the LDC?
Don't know. Larry?
Seems appropriate, has to fall to some committee, so it's up to the board to decide where the board wants it to go.
It wouldn't fall under.
So we have a motion and a second. We had discussion. Any further discussion?
Rules and regulations.
We're gonna do a roll call or voice?
Voice.
Voice. All those in favor of moving to the Economic Development Committees signify by saying aye.
No.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
One opposed. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Any other public comment? At this time, I'd like to welcome Hillary Steck, new supervisor for the town of Queensbury. Welcome, Hillary.
you.
Also, we need a motion to approve the February 17th and March 2nd special board meeting minutes, subject correction by the board. Moved by Supervisor Drowsy, second by Supervisor Driscoll. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, now we have a presentation of employee of the month. This is somebody that we all know who has done a yeoman's job for us for many, many years. I don't want to say how many years she's been here, but Christy Miller, she has taken on a lot of duties in the administrator's office. And Christy, if you want to come forward, I know you don't like this, but.
Christy Miller is recommended or is recognized as Employee of the Month. Christy's professionalism is evident in everything she does, whether it's answering the myriad of calls that are received by the county administrator's office during her handling of the county's FOIL request. She is often on the front line of dealing with some of the most difficult calls, requests, and she handles all while providing superior customer service. When a task is given to Christy, there's no doubt it will get done and get done well. Christy is an integral member of the budget team responsible for scheduling and rescheduling meetings and compiling the many documents needed to keep the budget process moving along. She handles all the monthly billing for the mailroom, print management contract, county credit cards, working the departments and vendors and ensuring the charges are timely and correct. On many days, just keeping the county administrator's office from going off the rails, actually to keep me from going off the rails, is a Herculean task, but Christy does it while managing her sense of humor. In summary, it's impossible to quantify the value that Christy brings to Warren County Administrator's Office. It's a pleasure to work with her and my honor to make this recognition. So,
Thank you, John.
thank you.
It's only been a few months working with you, but it's been an absolute pleasure. As well as working with all the ladies up here on the second floor, including Don. So thank you very much.
Okay, we have one public hearing. I asked the clerk to read the public hearing.
Warren County will hold a public hearing on March 17th, 2023 at 10 a.m. at the County Municipal Center located at 1340 State Route 9, Queensbury, New York, for the purpose of hearing public comments on Warren County's current Community Development Block Grant Project 1197 CP 110-21 Housing Needs Assessment. The CDBG program is administered by the New York State Office of Community Renewal and provides resources to eligible local governments for housing, economic development, public facilities, public infrastructure, and planning activities with the principal purpose of benefiting low, moderate income persons. The hearing will provide further information about the progress of the ongoing CDBG project. Comments related to the effectiveness and administration of the CDBG project will also be received at this time. The hearing is being conducted pursuant to section 570.486 subpart 1 of the CFR and in compliance with the requirements of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended. The Warren County Municipal Center is located at 1340 State Route 9, Queensbury, New York, is accessible to all persons with disabilities. If special accommodations are needed for persons with disabilities, those with hearing impairments, or those in need of translation from English, those individuals should contact Amanda Allen, Clerk of the Board of Supervisors at 518-761-7656 between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on regular business days by email at least 1 week in advance of the hearing date to allow for necessary arrangements. Written comments may also be submitted to Amanda Allen, Clerk of the Board of Supervisors, 1340 State Route 9, Lake George, New York, 12845, or by email no later than March 16th, 2023. I have not received any written comments.
Okay, we'll open this public hearing up to anybody who wishes to address the board about this, the housing needs assessment project. Hearing none, I'll leave the hearing open for a little bit. We'll go on to report of chairs. I'll do the chairman's report. Attended many of the last Board of Supervisors meeting on the 17th. Committee attended many committees, went to 3 days of NISEC in Albany. I attended the review of the state budget and advocating priorities in Albany and the First Amendment audit presentation. And for those who are not familiar with that, it's where the citizens come in and do videotapes of certain buildings and operations of the different municipalities. Also, I attended on March 1st, attended a joint inter-county meeting. I heard to talk about electric vehicle charging stations and electric fleet transitions. After that, I attended the day-long mandatory New York State Management Certification Training along with the County Administrator John Teflon and Supervisor John Stroud, Queensbury. We all attended this. This training is mandatory for us to apply for Homeland Security grants. On the 2nd, I attended more personnel and committee meetings. Also, we had a meeting on the PBA contract negotiations. On the 3rd, we had PBA contract negotiations. March 7th, I attended a meeting with Kevin Hay, Joseph, some of the members of DPW to talk about locating a morgue and potentially in our old jail building. On the 13th, we attended PBA negotiations again. And then on the 14th, I reluctantly, but I think it was the right decision to do, is close the county center, do the impending snowstorm, which turned out to be a wise decision based on the amount of snow that we got. So that's my report for the month of March. So we'll go on to committees. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. The Human Services Committee met on February 22nd. Coming from that meeting were 2 resolutions, 142 and 143. I would ask you for your support and consideration and support on those 2 resolutions. The committee will next meet this coming Wednesday, March 22nd, on or about 10:50 a.m. We'll be hearing from Veteran Services, and Denise DeResta has invited our peer-to-peer director for a short presentation during that part of the meeting. Then we'll hear from Countryside and then the Department of Social Services. Also, we have 2 representatives here from Cornell Cooperative Extension. They've dropped off their program update, which includes some very valuable information, including information on current job vacancies at Extension. and that's a great committee to serve on, and Supervisor Smith joined us at last month's meeting, and again, I encourage you to take a look at this. I also asked that an invitation to participate next month in the Department of New York American Gold Star Mothers Convention up in Lake George, I believe at the Holiday Inn. Towards the end of the month, I'm going to be participating in that program. And yesterday afternoon, I was at a press conference for the basketball tournament, and Gina Minster was one of the speakers. And when we talk about investment in community and use of monies, she estimated, her organization estimated that this weekend approximately $5 million of money is going to be coming into not just Glens Falls, but the greater Warren County, throughout Warren County, and that's pretty exciting news and a pretty good investment on the, I think it's $50,000 that we provide to that initiative. I invite people to come down. I'm going to get there this afternoon, and I'd be happy to buy you a soda if you'd like to.
Supervisor Fraser.
Soda.
Yeah, I got to be careful though.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Fraser.
Health Services met on February the 22nd as well. It was a fairly brief meeting. We have only one resolution, which is 141, which is amending an agreement with New York State Department of Health and Health Research Institute for public health emergency preparedness plan funding related to COVID-19 response activities to extend the termination date. And that was all that we had as a result. As I said, it was a very brief meeting. I'd appreciate your support on that. And I just want to let you know, I continue to enjoy working with these three department heads. It really is a pleasure for me. Thank you.
Supervisor Drossy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee last met on February 22nd during the meeting. Supervisor McGowan was appointed as the vice chair, and I appreciate your willingness to serve the committee in that position. Thank you. As a result of the meeting, we have consideration, for your consideration, resolutions 131 through 138. I don't believe there's anything controversial on the on that agenda. Also attended the NISAC Public Safety Committee meeting in Albany. We meet again this coming Wednesday, March 22nd at 9 a.m. Thank you.
Supervisor Smith, anything to report on your first month in office?
No, I'm learning to breathe underwater. Put your mics down, guys. Mike.
Supervisor Dickinson.
The Octax committee met twice. We met on February 9th. We had a full committee, and then they met again on the 22nd. I was not present, and apparently several of my colleagues were not. I want to thank Gene for taking over the meeting, and thank Chairman Garrity for sitting in for a quorum. All those meetings and all that time, we only have one resolution, it's 146. But if you look at it, the laundry list of all the monies we've given away for Octax, most of them are pretty straightforward. A lot of them are repeats. But if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Supervisor Merlino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tourism is going to meet this coming Wednesday, number one. As you see on your desk, the travel guide is in for our summer. It's really turned out well. If you really take time to read it, almost everything in the county has got something in here, picture, reading about it. There's more on the table when you leave. People from the side won't pick it up. We posted it already on social media, and we have already received 1,000 requests for the new guide. It's a popular travel guide that we get out every year. We have now 80,000 on hand. They'll be going out to information centers throughout the existing market. And April 1st, we'll start handing them out to towns and villages of the county. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Stroud.
Yes, thank you. And Town of Queensbury also welcomes Hillary Steck to our team. The Legislative Rules and Government Operations met on February 23rd, 2023. Two resolutions are before you as an outgrowth of that committee meeting. Resolution 144, which is an update of a very needed update to the Warren County Computer Usage Policy. It has gone through the Legislative Rules and Government Operations Committee gauntlet and is before you today for your approval. And Resolution 145 is to allow Pam Bogle to make appointments. Special court clerks and special court clerks have the same powers and duties as the county clerk for the transaction of business at court sessions attended by them. And this is to authorize Pam Bogle, Warren County Clerk, to appoint Sheila Kent, Scott Fitzsimmons, Lisa Roulier, and Ingrid Edwards as special court clerks effective January 1st, 2020. That may need to be amended. Okay. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Supervisor McGowan, any report?
No, thank you.
Supervisor Beatty?
Thank you. I'm not a chairman of any committee, but I do serve on some and I just want to say ARPA met this morning at 8:30 and we gave out, we end up giving out all the money and then we'll probably meet quarterly to make sure things are on the up and up and so forth. But long story short is that was a committee meeting that has met for years, I think over 2 years. We've had countless hours of meetings, of reading reports, of reading applications, of scoring them. Most committee members did that. There was a few that didn't. I was a little disappointed in that. But my point is, when you work collaboratively with the public sector and elected officials, you get amazing results. We just didn't hand the money over to the general fund like some counties did and didn't do the work. We did the work in depth over and over and over and over again in committee meetings and research. We handed out millions of dollars to a number of organizations, individuals, and agencies for the betterment of this county. And I am darn proud of the work that Chairwoman Bramer did and Co-Chair Dickinson did and the members of the committee in absolutely getting the biggest bang and the most rewarding bang of your taxpayer dollars for people in Warren County. And I wish we had more to give out, but we don't. But the fact of the matter is we're all in a better place, everyone in this room. From a mental health standpoint, from a safety standpoint, from almost any other position you want to take because of this committee and the due diligence they did. So it was probably the most rewarding committee I've ever served on in my 10 years up here on the county board, and I've served on dozens of committees. This was a grand slam, and I just want to thank again the chairwoman and chairman. Thanks.
Thank you. Supervisor Steck, any comments?
No report, Chairman, but just wish to say thank you, everybody, for the warm welcome, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Okay, Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Budget Committee did not meet. However, I did fill in on March 2nd for Chairman Wild of the Personnel Committee. Out of that is 4 resolutions, 158 through 161. They're all pretty straightforward. I'll just mention 160 is a request to home rule request to the New York State Legislature to continue our additional mortgage tax of 25 cents per 100. And out on February 22nd, I traveled to Long Lake to the local government review board. There, we get our usual report of what's happening or what's in front of the Adirondack Park Agency. However, there was considerable discussion about water and sewer for the smaller hamlets, as most of them can't afford a typical quote sewer system. So there was a lot of discussion, and I think the local government planning meeting at the end of April that they have. I think this is going to be in Saranac Lake, and I think that's a focus of that meeting. I found that to be very interesting and probably helpful to a lot, especially the smaller hamlet areas. And that's all I have.
Okay, Supervisor Conover.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public Works met on February 23rd. Represented in your packet by resolutions 147 through 157. They're all project-related resolutions. So Mr. Hajos is here if you have any specific questions on any of these specific projects. Yesterday evening, we had a meeting of the organic management plan, citizen input meeting. It was, I thought, well attended, both in person here at the center and also via the internet. As you know, the overall goal of that plan is to develop an approach where hopefully we can begin to separate green waste from a waste stream, thereby reducing by weight the amount of waste that we have to pay to dispose of, and recycling that green waste into a compost type material. Very exciting. I'm very happy. We have a consultant that we've hired to help guide us in that process. I thought they did a very nice job organizing the meeting and presenting different facets to those present. If any of you have any interest in that, please communicate with Mr. Hajos about what meetings will be taking place going forward. I mean, our goal is to have a very robust process here, which hopefully develops a strategy going forward and a plan going forward that will help guide us to something that's going to be much better for the environment and also much more affordable to the communities and our taxpayers. And that concludes my report.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee met on March 2nd. Before you are 16 resolutions, 15 are roll calls. I apologize for that. There are some info there. 122 and 123 and 162 through 165, which are on pages 7, 8, and 9 of your index. 162 and 163 are from the Board of Elections regarding voting equipment lease and purchase. 160 4 and 5 are from Building and Grounds regarding increased costs of countryside renovations, which is now up over $3 million. 166 and 167 are county administration, and that's to create a fund that covers sexual abuse claims. And this is part of a plan that reduces the insurance premiums by self-funding a higher deductible. 168, 69, 70, and 71 are DPW regarding funding of culverts and bridge projects around the county. 172 and 173 are OCTAX, moving money from the OCTAX reserve fund to approved events and tourism budget. Some of these are carryovers from the year before. 174 is from Office of Emergency Service for an agreement to provide mass notification ability to employees and others. And 175 is planning for a carryover of funds from fiscal year 22 to 23 for the comprehensive strategic plan. Would like your support on all of those. Would also like to note that you probably all saw our sales tax report, and it's still looking very robust for the first quarter of this year. And I'd like to look over to the treasurer. Anything you'd like to add? No. That's my report for today, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Supervisor McDevitt.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Brand.
Thank you, Chairman. Environmental concerns met on February 23rd. We also met with economic growth in a joint meeting. So we have two resolutions. 139 is the opt-out from 487 real property tax exemption. So it's for solar projects, renewable projects. And while I am all for renewable energy projects, I think this is the right move for us to make sure that we do not accidentally miss our window of time to ask for the ability to negotiate during a pilot. So that's my personal take on that one. And I do think that I do ask for your support on 139. 140 is to renew our participation in the state grant program for septic replacement funding. Goes to that idea that a lot of homeowners cannot afford their own septic system. It's not connection to a sewer, it's a septic system, and this is money that the state is distributing to us for properties around Lake George. So right now it only is Lake George. We've been trying to expand that to other water bodies throughout the county, and I'm looking at you about Brant Lake and others. This particular resolution is also asking for the state to increase our eligibility so that we can give the money to properties that are within 500 feet of the lake instead of just 250 feet, and then 100 feet of tributaries. And the reason we're asking for that is because the Lake George Park Commission, as you may know, has adopted regulations to do inspections of septic systems that go all the way out to 500 feet from the lake and will include properties along the tributaries. But right now, the septic replacement funding doesn't go out. It doesn't cover the eligibility as far. And we've been asking them to increase that. We've been asking the state DEC, but we haven't been able to get there yet. So we're hoping that a resolution from the board will help push things along. And I'm asking for your support for 140. In addition, the ARPA committee has been meeting. We did meet this morning. Supervisor Beatty stole some of my thunder here, but we have a few resolutions from a prior meeting for you today, 124 through 129. I would ask for your support for all of those. I think they're all very important applications to help our community. And then we did have our meeting this morning to allocate the rest of the funding. So at this point, we have distributed all $12 million that we have been allocated to Warren County. We have distributed millions of dollars to essential county operations and functions, including $3.5 million for our bridges and culverts. And we also, just calling out one other specific item, the $500,000 for the jail asbestos abatement project. And I wanted to point out that Don Lehman was able to do a really neat article in the NISAC magazine from a couple months ago, calling out that particular project and the money that the ARPA committee gave to the jail for that particular project. That was really exciting. We also distributed $1 million to the Community Services Board for mental health services around the county. And this morning we distributed a little over $100,000 more allocated towards mental health, and specifically those who are suffering from mental health and experiencing homelessness. So we'll look for that. Please support that at the next full board meeting. We also allocated hundreds of thousands of dollars to small businesses and not-for-profits. And I want to specifically call out the $750,000 that we distributed to the Glens Falls Hospital project. And we also distributed hundreds of thousands of dollars to EMSs and fire departments around our community to help with public service emergency response. And we have done so many wonderful things around the community, around the county, in all of our communities. So I'm really looking forward to people being able to announce that they've done things with our ARPA money and to be able to see the impact that is making around the county. I know we've received a letter already from the Glens Falls Family Services Association thanking us for the money and how grateful they were for that money. And Glens Falls Fire Chief informed me yesterday they were able to purchase the ambulance that they needed for Glens Falls, and they were used a portion from the Warren County ARPA money. So I want to give lots of thanks to the planning department. They have worked very hard to put all of this together, keep Dennis and I organized. That was a very tough task, and I really appreciate all their work. And thank you to the treasurer's office for helping keep us organized as well and the money flowing. Also to the county attorney's office for gazillions of contracts and all of the work that you put in to make sure that we are doing this carefully and protecting the county. And lastly, I want to thank the committee, including all of the people from the public who are on that. Several individuals, including Mr. Agnew from the hospital, provided valuable expertise and insight, and he dedicated tons of hours to us for free. It was really an enormous lift for people in the public to be doing this. They're very valuable, and I'm grateful for their support. And as Supervisor Beatty mentioned, we will be continuing to meet to do quarterly reporting and updates on the money as it is being distributed. And unfortunately, we've had one experience already where an entity was not able to accept the funding. So we're seeing some of the money flowing back to us. So we'll have a little bit more work to do as we go along. But I wanted to thank all of the committee members, including the supervisors here today, who participated in that process. That's my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Bruno.
Well, tough act to follow. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. County facilities met on February 23rd at 9 a.m. I'll touch on a few of the key points of discussion at that meeting. One was the air show. We're considering an air show for 2024, I believe. There was a presentation by Mr. Breen, the chairman and CEO of the Air Show Network, which is a PowerPoint presentation. This entity is a leader in air show entertainment, and they would put this together. It's pretty exciting. I think it's going to be a major event for that year if it goes forward, which I'm confident it will. We discussed the Joseph Warren Museum. Phase 1 of that was approved. I don't know if Supervisor Thomas has anything wants to add anything to that. He's the chairman of that committee.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, there is 2 resolutions in ARPA here. I think it's let's see. 124 and 125, and it's for $80,000 to do the first phase of the design plans for the museum, where building number 11 is the old detention home and other things that's been.
Thank you, Supervisor Thomas. That's another, I think it's an exciting project for the county, for the region. Additionally, we discussed the regional morgue, the creation of a regional morgue, which would, at this point, we anticipate would occupy a portion of the former jail, utilizing that space. Work has been completed there to remove all the asbestos and do some selective demolition. So in order to prepare that for possible use as a morgue and probably some other uses because there's a lot of space there. The Department of Public Works, under the guidance of Superintendent Hajos, has put together a letter of authorization request to be issued to 2 firms that have agreements with the county for feasibility study, preliminary design, et cetera, for that facility. And again, that's a very exciting, would be a great thing for Warren County and the region, possibly Vermont participating in this, but we'll have more information on that in the future. And I think that's it for me. Thank you. I don't know, does anybody have any questions on any of this? If not, that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I'd like to echo what the chairwoman said about the ARPA committee. It was a great job by all who served on that. I have had a few people approach me out in the public thanking me for the funds that they've got and for the mental health agencies. And I'm sure the EMS agencies, once they receive their money and buy that equipment, it's going to be very important to them and all the other projects that the committee came up with. I must say, I'm very pleased that, $12 million in 2 years, and it's worked very well here in Warren County. So kudos to those who were in the committee. Also, before I close the public hearing on housing, I just want to thank to all the highway crews, Office of Emergency Services, all the emergency crews for this latest storm. It was challenges. Some of our communities were out. Hague, and I know Hague and Stony Creek were out of power for a day and a half maybe, but to Anne Marie, all the emergency services crew, all the highway crews, thank you for the good job. And we do have, before I close the public hearing, we do have a comment on the housing.
Good morning. This public hearing is being held pursuant to CDBG regs that require a second public hearing in the process. The county was awarded $46,000 to undertake a housing needs and market analysis study. Nova Gradic has been retained for those services. We have done at their request and our request an extension of that for 3 months. So that project should complete sometime in May. Nova Gradic will have staff here next month. And I've been in contact with them. Patricia in the office is a point person with them. But according to CDBG regs, when 80% of the funds are expended, we need to have a public hearing, and that's what this fulfills. The
let's see, anything else? That's really all that really needs to be covered. I'll entertain any questions.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I know we've been working on this for a while, and I'm just wondering if at this point that we're, what is it, 3/4 of the way through? Is there a draft report at this point?
Not yet. They will be here and as I said, the first part of April. They're running a little bit behind. This public hearing was scheduled when we anticipated 80% of the funds would be expended. They're not at this point, but because of the two-month delay process to get the public hearing, we were anticipating that that's where we would be. The person who was primarily responsible, Ed Braddock, retired abruptly. And Julia has taken over and she will be here next week or next month. I've had contact with her. I know they have made some contacts in the community with some of the housing providers. I have provided them some cohort survival analysis and some mortgage gap analysis and property transfer information. So they are compiling their data and they will be here. And I suspect shortly after they are here in April, they will confirm some of their information that they have and they'll have a draft.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the public hearing on the housing? Any other questions for Wayne? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Thank you. At this time, a report by the county administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 21st of February, Supervisor Beatty and I met with residents of Cedars to discuss their concerns about the transition of the county meals program to Salvation Army. We answered their questions, and I think the bottom line for them is they will continue to receive meals regardless of whether it's provided through Cedars or the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army is willing to discuss congregate meal at the site. We're in the late stages of developing a contract with the Salvation Army, and I'll keep you updated on that. I attended the NISAC conference the chairman mentioned. In particular, Tuesday afternoon, we had a county administrator session, and the highest priority item was the governor's budget that eliminated the federal Medicaid EFMAP pass-through that would result in a 1.5 million cut to Warren County, to our Medicaid budget. Warren County joined the majority of counties who opposed this cut, and thanks to efforts of the Senate and the Assembly, they have both rejected the governor's cuts as well. So still undetermined what will happen at this point, but that was a key point of concern. The other thing we discussed at the county administrative session was FOIL request. They also have challenges, and I found out that is where I learned that most counties charge for certain FOIL requests under certain conditions that we have outlined in our policy. So we have begun charging for FOIL requests that will take in excess of 2 hours work, and we charge at the salary of the lowest paid employee who does that at this point would be my confidential assistant. And we've had maybe one request that would have exceeded 6 or 7 hours. Anything at the 2 hour point or below, we will not charge. It's the ones where the big fishing nets come out and ask for a lot of information. We have automated processes. They're not very efficient. What we have to do in our IT department is multiple searches. And then if it's for emails have to be converted from email files individually to an Adobe file. And that just takes an excessive amount of time. And so we're trying to encourage people to keep their FOIL request targeted so that they're more specific, and we work with people on that. 2nd of March, I appreciate the Board of Supervisors report for the reappointment of DSS Commissioner. Chairman Garrity mentioned the PBA negotiations, participated in those, and also the regional morgue meeting. On the 8th of March, we had a very productive meeting with Washington County regarding SUNY Adirondack funding. As you know, SUNY Adirondack has asked us to increase our funding share from about 12% shared with us in Washington County to 15%. Washington County has agreed to commensurate increase if we go forward with an increase based on FTE. And that is, we're having a meeting on the 30th of March to maybe work out some of those details and see. And at that point, then we'll bring it to through the committee to the Board of Supervisors for discussion. 10th of March, met with Labella to officially begin the process of developing the county's comprehensive plan. And they have a pretty aggressive approach and timeline for us. We think it'll take about 12 to 18 months, but the process has begun and we'll be getting all of you involved in that. Just a reminder, we have the board workshop on the 21st of March to discuss the CDTA issue with Greater Glens Falls Transit closing and options for the county, and we'll discuss that in detail at that workshop. Tourism director interviews were canceled on this Tuesday, and we've rescheduled them for the 21st of March. I'll keep you posted on that as well. We have one employee I'd like to recognize the 25 years of service, Tammy Breen from Social Services, 25. So congratulations to Tammy and thanks for her years of service. At this point, I would like to request that we go into an executive session under Public Officers Law, Section 105, 1F to discuss matters leading to the demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person. And I think we need a motion for that.
So moved.
Motion by Supervisor Leggett, second by Supervisor Conover, discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're going to executive